Valdez traffic. We fetched up underground and evidently leaking some oil.
The Exxon Valdez oil spill was the third worst ecological catastrophe to ever occur in North America. Approximately 11 million gallons, or 44,000 tons of oil, were spilled into Prince William Sound, the equivalent of 17 Olympic regulation-sized pools, or the weight of 15,136 Volkswagen Beetles. The spill had a tremendous environmental impact, one that continues to affect the surrounding ecosystem to this day. The initial spill decimated many of the species in Prince William Sound. The sheer numbers are astounding. 250,000 seabirds, 2,800 otters, 300 harbor seals, 250 bald eagles, 22 orcas, and countless salmon, herring, and other sea life. Such a spill changed the landscape of the environment forever. Among the worst properties of oil is the presence of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. These toxic, non-polar molecules have such rigid hexagonal carbon ring structures that they don't dissolve in water. Furthermore, they can be formed by the burning of oil, thus eliminating one logical cleanup method. Certain polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons are often found in many everyday dangerous products, such as cigarette smoke and incense. The hydrocarbonic chemicals found in oil prevent furry mammals from being able to insulate. Also, birds' feathers lose their water-repellent properties. These animals are no longer able to insulate themselves, and often die from hypothermia. As sad as it may be, many also die from involuntary oil consumption, as almost every food source in the ecosystem was contaminated to some degree. Eggs and larvae alike have difficulty germinating due to oil's contaminants. The oil had a long-term impact on all creatures, from small ones like mollusks to large ones like orcas. 1,300 miles of shoreline were affected by the spill, the equivalent of almost all of the eastern seaboard from Boston to Miami. And despite cleanup efforts, oil residue can still be found on beaches today, 26 years later. Through the variety of cleanup methods utilized, a meager 10% of the oil spilled was completely removed from Prince William Sound. This was due, in no small part, to Exxon's wanton irresponsibility and complete mishandling of the situation in the immediate hours after the spill. Though they promised a rapid and complete cleanup of the oil in the event of a spill, none of the promised action was taken. Instead, a storm that hit Prince William Sound the next day paused cleanup efforts and dispersed the oil even farther from its original area of impact.
We're 9 hours after the wreck, and there was not a speck of promised recovery equipment on the water. This had all been promised within 6 hours, and we were 3 hours past 6 hours, and nothing.
5 major types of cleanup were used in an attempt to clean Prince William Sound after the Valdez oil spill. First, mechanical cleanup was used to till beaches through the use of heavy equipment so that oil deeper embedded in the sand would be uncovered and washed out. Another important method of cleanup was bioremediation, also known as the fertilization of beaches so hydrocarbon-consuming microorganisms could thrive once again. However, bioremediation proved effective only in areas in which there were relatively little amounts of oil. Yet another type of cleanup method involved the use of hot water to disperse the oil and collect it. Nonetheless, the water annihilated many smaller microorganisms because they were simply boiled by the heat. Cleanup crews also experimented with the use of chemical solvents, but this practice did not become prevalent because of its detrimental side effects on surrounding life. The most common method of cleanup utilized high-pressure fire hoses to move oil to the shore where it could then be trapped by booms. Although the high-pressure cleanup method was the most popular and environmentally friendly, it still had a negative impact on the ecology of the Prince William Sound environment. The water hoses disrupted and destroyed the gravel and sediments on the beaches, which are vital in protecting mollusks. With their habitat destroyed, the mollusk population decreased significantly after the spill. Though mollusks may seem insignificant, a change in their population had a tremendous impact on the rest of the food chain. Mollusks provide a major food source for the otter population, and with the decreased source of food, the otter population also declined. In some cases, animals in Prince William Sound did more than just simply decline. Pacific herring have yet to return to the Prince William Sound, and many seabirds dependent on the herring are not expected to fully recover until the herring return as well. Similarly, the orca whales have no hope of regrowth. This tragedy has tremendous implications for the integrity of the Sound's ecosystem and its food chain. The detrimental effects of the polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons pervade all levels of the food chain. At the top, orca whales consume mammals who themselves have consumed smaller fish and other wildlife. Since nearly all creatures existing in the Sound consumed oil in some way, shape, or form, the orca whales have a buildup of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which are fundamentally fatal to their health. For instance, since the water in the Sound was contaminated by the oil, there was a lack of necessary nutrients. Without these nutrients, the zooplankton were no longer viable, and consequently the salmon lost one important source of food. Without the salmon, larger seabirds such as puffins and larger mammals like the orca cannot thrive. Thus, a small amount of oil contamination at the lowest levels can have a tremendous impact on the long-term ecology of the environment. Now, imagine the impact of 11 million gallons of oil. Of course, the Valdez oil spill devastated the populations of several once vibrant species in the Prince William Sound ecosystem.
My feeling is, whatever you killed, there's plenty more of it right down here, and it's going to come back. If you don't remove the oil, nature is going to eventually remove it, but it's going to look bad for a long time, and the publicity is going to be horrible. You kill some little critters in the process, you couldn't possibly kill them all, so they're going to repropagate.
Some species were harmed so terribly by the effects of the oil that they were beyond recovery. However, some species were able to recover. Take, for example, sea otters. In the years following the spill, population curves of sea otters exemplified classic logistic growth. Immediately after the spill, for 5 years, species like the sea otter saw an extremely sharp decline in population. However, in the last decade or so, sea otters have seen tremendous regrowth, to the point that they have returned to their original ecological status. An ongoing survey conducted by the Alaskan government sheds light on this phenomenon, as sea otters have reasserted themselves in the environment. Nearly 26 years after the spill, the Prince William Sound is still suffering from the effects of the oil. Many animals have not recovered, such as the Pacific herring. In fact, in 2009, it was discovered that 17 out of 27 monitored species had not recovered.
You step back and just look at the Sound as a whole. It's, in general, recovering. But that's like looking at a patient who has cancer and saying, well, most of the patient is okay. It's just this little cancer here and there that's causing a problem.
In addition, on much of the coastline, oil can still be found on the beaches. The oil that still remains in the environment only decreases at a rate of less than 4% per year. In other words, this oil is here to stay. The Exxon Valdez Oil Spill Trustee Council estimates that it will take decades, possibly even centuries, for all traces of the oil spill to disappear completely.
Exxon paid $300 million to those hurt by the spill, and a jury later awarded another $5 billion in punitive damages. Exxon appealed, delaying the case for 14 years and leaving lasting bitterness in Alaska.
4,000 of the original plaintiffs have died since the Exxon Valdez.
In 2008, the Supreme Court cut punitive damages to a tenth of the original amount.
This once vibrant and thriving ecosystem came close to complete annihilation as the result of the actions of an irresponsible corporation. Thousands upon thousands of miles of shoreline were ruined as a result of the spilled oil, and countless fauna were completely obliterated. Though some of the environment has been revitalized, much of it has not. The recuperation of the Prince William Sound has and will be a long and difficult journey, and the goal of full recovery may never be reached.